Hello and welcome to I Want to Fight Araki, a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure close analysis podcast. I'm Thomas.
Hey, Vsauce, Michael here.
Where are your fingers? Where's your JoJo's close analysis? Because today we're covering Stardust Crusaders episodes 42, 43, and 44, the penultimate. This is the second to last episode of our Stardust Crusaders discussion, and this might be a beefer. We haven't had a beefer in a while, but
We haven't had a beefer in a while.
we'll see what happens. So with all that said, let's get into the summary. Jotaro prepares to throw his claimed high and outside fastball. Darby remains confident in his abilities and so uses Atum to read Jotaro's soul. Once Darby confirms Jotaro's intentions are true, he prepares, only to suddenly have the pitch change on him. Darby is shocked at this development as Atum continues to read Jotaro's soul, only for Jotaro to continue to lie about his pitches. Darby begins to hyperventilate, unsure of how Jotaro is able to cheat. Eventually, Jotaro continues to throw strikeout after strikeout, and Darby admits defeat subconsciously, freeing Kakyoin's soul from the puppet. Deciding that because the game was over, Jotaro reveals how they cheated. It wasn't Jotaro playing the game at the end, but rather Joseph using Hermit Purple to use the controller. Jotaro's hat was merely misdirection. With Kakyoin freed, Jotaro uses Star Platinum to pummel Darby, which sends him into the sky, revealing the pocket dimension to be just another room in the mansion. Meanwhile, DIO theorizes that he only needs the blood of one more person to completely fuse with Jonathan's body, and, without hesitation, Vanilla Ice, one of DIO's servants, decapitates himself in order to offer DIO his blood. DIO is touched by the offer, but says that he cannot drink the blood of someone with Vanilla Ice's caliber, and so he heals his servant with his own blood, transforming Vanilla Ice into a vampire. Outside the mansion, enough time elapses where Avdol, Iggy, and Polnareff decide to head in. Before they do, Avdol tells the party that their main objective is to kill DIO, and that if one of them falls behind or is killed, they can't mourn them. Everyone agrees and heads inside. Avdol decides to use a technique of Magician's Red, which creates a six-pronged compass of fire that will warn them of any enemies. When they enter, the interior of the mansion seems to be a maze. Suddenly, Avdol's compass goes off, and using his sense of smell, Iggy summons the Fool, who breaks open a pillar, and a servant of DIO's falls out unconscious and bleeding badly. Suddenly, the maze-like design of the mansion disappears, revealing the servant to be a stand user. The group presses on, but Avdol notices some writing on a wall and that says when he turns around, he'll die, and when he does so, Vanilla Ice appears inside his stand, Cream. In his last moments, Avdol pushes Polnareff and Iggy out of the way, but as a result, Avdol is consumed by the stand, killing him and leaving only his arms left. Cream begins to devour Avdol's arms, and as Vanilla Ice explains that his stand leads to a dimension of darkness, and that he will kill the remaining Crusaders one by one. As Jotaro, Kakyoin, and Joseph search for DIO, Polnareff attacks Vanilla Ice. In Polnareff's rage, Silver Chariot's speed is significantly increased, and he is able to pierce Cream. Vanilla Ice escapes temporarily, and with a moment to breathe, Polnareff and Iggy mourn their friend. Polnareff kneels from all the pressure and narrowly avoids an attack from Cream. Cream begins chasing after the two with its void, and Polnareff considers taking the exit door before deciding that they need to avenge Avdol. The duo head up to the second floor and see a hole in the middle of the room, indicating Vanilla Ice is nearby. Polnareff is able to deduce Cream's weakness, that in order for Vanilla Ice to accurately attack them, he needs to briefly appear out of the void. Polnareff and Iggy wait for their moment to strike. Polnareff frantically searches around the room, but suddenly Cream appears through the floor, cutting off the toes on one of Polnareff's feet. Iggy uses the Fool, whips up a sandstorm, and despite Polnareff's injuries, the two manage to disappear. As Vanilla Ice searches, suddenly DIO descends the steps behind him and raises his hand to kill Vanilla Ice. Vanilla Ice counterattacks, knowing that the real DIO would never leave his chambers with the sun up, revealing it to be a fake DIO created by the Fool. Angered by Iggy's disrespect towards DIO, Vanilla Ice begins kicking the tar out of Iggy to the point where he begins coughing up blood. Polnareff, in an attempt to save Iggy, summons Silver Chariot and attacks Vanilla Ice, who disappears into Cream's void. Polnareff gets the idea to have Silver Chariot surround the room with sand in order to see the outline of Cream's void. Vanilla Ice briefly reappears, and Polnareff summons Silver Chariot, plunging his sword into Vanilla Ice's head. Vanilla Ice survives and sucks 2 of Polnareff's fingers as well as a chunk of his leg into the void before devouring half of Silver Chariot's sword as well. Having lost his patience, Vanilla Ice uses Cream to encircle the room numerous times in order to trap Polnareff and kill him. Polnareff attempts to free himself, but because of his injuries he can't move, and as he is sucked into the void, he bids farewell to Iggy. As Jotaro and the others examine the wreckage from the first encounter with Vanilla Ice, the newly sired vampire attempts to kill Iggy after having gotten rid of Polnareff. Iggy, however, is coated with sand, revealing that using the last of his strength, Iggy used the Fool to save Polnareff. As the Fool begins to fall apart, Polnareff uses the momentum to plunge Silver Chariot's sword into Vanilla Ice's head, causing Silver Chariot to grab the other end and twist the blade, snapping Vanilla Ice's neck as the two slam into the ground. Vanilla Ice recovers thanks to his vampiric healing, but because of Polnareff's rage, Vanilla Ice is unable to keep up with the speed and power of Silver Chariot. As Vanilla Ice makes one last run towards Polnareff, Silver Chariot cuts open a door, letting a ray of sunlight into the room. Vanilla Ice's hand carelessly falls into the ray, vaporizing it. Polnareff insults Dio, calling him a filthy vampire, as Vanilla Ice rushes forward once more, only to lose a leg. Polnareff goads Vanilla Ice into attacking once more, and just as he leans forward, Silver Chariot taps Vanilla Ice into the sun's rays, vaporizing him completely. As the dust of Vanilla Ice flies away, Polnareff looks outside the window to see the souls of Avdol and Iggy thank Polnareff. Meanwhile, back in Japan, Suzy Q has come to the country in order to see Holly. Rosas, Suzy's personal assistant, begins to become nervous at the thought of telling Suzy the condition of her daughter, but when the party arrives at the Kujo house, Suzy reveals that she already knew about Holly's condition. While Rosas is unsure of how to help Holly, Suzy says that to help her, they need to believe in Joseph and Jotaro. Back in Egypt, Dio's last remaining servant, a vampire named Nukesaku, thinks of how he'll prove himself to Dio by killing the Crusaders. Using the feminine-looking face in the back of his head, he disguises himself as a victim of Dio's, but Jotaro sees through the trick instantly, as Nukesaku had forgotten to switch his hands around as well. They pummel Nukesaku and proceed onwards, but elsewhere in the mansion, as Polnareff tends to his wounds, Dio himself appears at the top of a flight of stairs, staring down at the swordsman and mocking him as the final battle begins. End of episodes.
Vanilla Ice.
Yeah,
it's
this...
the chick who drives the
horse!
One of these days, we are required to watch Cool as Ice.
Yeah.
Vanilla Ice made a movie, guys, about him.
It's a weird movie.
You haven't seen it, but it probably is.
It's a fun movie to riff on, though. It's a blast. But yeah, this is kind of interesting, because this is like the first time a stand specifically is a musical reference. There's a band called Cream, and Cream is named after that, and, you know, Vanilla Ice Cream, which is like, hey, that fits with the Part 5 motif, where all the characters are named after food.
It's Part 5 and every other part combined into one.
Exactly. Alright, so we got a lot to talk about here. I actually took some minor notes for this one.
Oh, Thomas took notes. How about that? It's not just me taking my entire page, or sometimes 3 pages of notes every time now.
But yeah, did you wanna start with something, or?
Do I? First, I will start out by saying this is one of the most brutal fights in the entire series. Jesus Christ!
I think it's either this or the first fight with Kira in Part 4 are the most brutal fights.
I feel like this one is still more brutal than that one, although that one is Jesus Christ.
Yeah, there's a lot of blood. But yeah, I mean,
people get the shit beat.
Two characters die in this fight. It's crazy. Especially
main characters.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, it's not a JoJo part unless the main characters start dying at the end. Yeah, but what should we talk about?
Speaking of death, let's start with that first. So, Iggy and Avdol both die, and it's just a minor point to bring up. We all know that Kak, our boy Khaki Pants, he later dies, well, very soon, as well. And I feel like I think the reason why just like never was attached to Kakyoin as much as even Avdol, who didn't get like a whole lot of character development either. I think the reason why I still found myself more attached to Avdol is because Kakyoin was they were both absent for like a good chunk of the part.
Yeah.
But Kakyoin's absence was a lot later on. Like, he just got back.
Right.
We've had a lot of time without him. So the two of them, especially Kakyoin, got done so dirty.
Yeah, I think it's weird. I have to say, the first time I watched these episodes, I think it had been spoiled for me that Avdol and Iggy die. But I had sort of, the first time I was like, like, this is kind of sad, but I don't know, like, this time, like, maybe it's just because we've spent so much time talking about Stardust Crusaders and breaking it down, but, like, it really hit me this time, and, especially, like, this is where the ending theme, Last Train Home, like, really hits you, because, not everyone is going to be able to take that last train home.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's brutal.
Very sad.
I think, and, because, like, these are sort of character deaths, this is kind of like, this is where we see a lot of the characters wrap up their arcs. I think Polnareff is basically done, from this point onwards, even though, he's still alive. So, yeah, I guess I'm trying to order this out.
Are you trying to transition?
Yeah.
Shall we talk about Polnareff now?
We could talk about Polnareff.
Let's talk about Polnareff.
Yeah, so I think,
let's talk about Polnareff and in relations to Avdol, since we were talking about the two of them.
That sounds good.
They had a whole thing at the beginning where Avdol was like, hey, if any of us die, let's not try to save each other. Let's not grieve for each other, because we can't waste our time and energy with that. Which is kind of... It's very similar to, I would say... What was the episode called? The Emperor and the Hangman, where Polnareff was, of course, very sad, because he had to find the guy who killed his sister, but Avdol's like, hold up, bro. Let's think about this logically. My man Avdol is the smart guy, right? And he's just playing his smart guy thing. And it's very interesting to think about, because him playing the smart guy thing, being the dad friend that he is, goes off and saves Polnareff anyways and gets himself fake killed. And this is exactly the same thing that happens. He tells someone to do one thing, and then, expects that they are to do it, but never really follows through himself. And I think saves Polnareff, pushes him out of the way.
And I think, I have a lot to say about this sort of development. I think, Polnareff even, like, brings up the fact that, he's, like, he's been, like, a sentimental idiot or something like that since, like, way back when, which, sort of evokes, him calling Avdol an idiot in the Whole Horse, Hanged Man episodes. I think as well, this almost kind of ties into, like the great toxic masculinity theory.
The great theory.
In a way, because it's like, like Avdol is like telling them, like, you can't really succumb to your emotions. You can't really, mourn for us. Like, the prime objective is like killing Dio. But what's kind of interesting is that, this is like the ultimate like synthesis of like Polnareff's character arc, I feel, because they specifically say in the show that Silver Chariot is way stronger here because Polnareff is so angry and because he is feeling, all these emotions. He's not closed off and like, I mean, when we say this fight is brutal, it's really just Silver Chariot mopping the floor. Chariot. Silver Cheerio.
Yep.
Silver Chariot mopping the floor with Vanilla Ice in the last moments.
Literally.
I mean, he snaps his neck and you can hear the crack and like he pinballs Vanilla Ice around the room and stabs him a million times.
I like to imagine that that's the actual Vanilla Ice getting pinballed around the room. You know, in our funny moments thing at the end, I might tell a lovely story that someone told me about Vanilla Ice just for fun.
Yes. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that's, it's sort of, he's not taking Avdol's advice to heart, but it's like, like Polnareff at the beginning of the series, he's very, like we've established, he's very emotional. He's very, like
Sensitive guy.
His motivation is pure revenge, and like that's what drives him. But sort of in this scene, this is like a combination of like how Polnareff has sort of grown as a person. He acknowledges his faults. He acknowledges that he can't have a sort of obsession with bringing back his sister. His sister's dead. There's nothing he can really do about it. And this is also, so, you have that part, but then it's also sort of combined with Polnareff, like, feeling enough to a degree where Silver Chariot becomes just, like, crazy powerful, at least in comparison to Vanilla Ice. And, Cream is, like, a really strong stand. Like, all it basically needs to do is touch you and you're dead. And, like, Polnareff and Silver Chariot, like, still make it out. Okay. And, yeah, that leads me to a good way to transition into what I want to talk about, unless there's more you wanted to add with Polnareff and Avdol.
There might be. Let me consult my notes, guys. Take a shot.
All right.
Okay, so I do have a few things to say about our best boy Polnareff, an absolute king. Polnareff's out for revenge again, yet for Avdol, our boy. And, because his good bro was just murdered, him and Iggy pull a fast one and make a fake Dio.
Yeah.
And to try to Jesus Christ.
They try to trick
yes,
Vanilla
thank
Ice.
You. They try to trick him. And it's interesting because when Vanilla Ice finds out the trick, he pretty much states that he'd normally hate attacking someone from behind, like, because of a trick. He doesn't want to do any backhanded shenanigans. He calls it cowardly. But he has absolutely no guilt because of Vanilla Ice, because he did the same thing to him.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just a little character thing happening there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's, this fight really, like, pushes Polnareff to his physical and emotional limits.
He's willing to do things that he considers cowardly.
Yeah, in order to sort of, like, win the greater battle and survive, yeah. I think there's speaking of that, I think there's a really interesting parallel and sort of mirroring going on here between Vanilla Ice and Polnareff. They both have, like, they are both sort of defined by obsession, where Polnareff is sort of obsessed with, at least in the beginning, he's obsessed with getting revenge for his sister and getting revenge for Avdol in this episode. And similarly, Vanilla Ice is obsessed with sort of serving Dio. Like, he literally, like, cuts off his own head.
This man is a simp.
In order to serve Dio. And so I think it's really fascinating. This is really Polnareff facing himself. I think, like, a line that stands out to me is, like, right before Vanilla Ice gets vaporized by the sunlight, Polnareff is sort of goading him into attacking him, and he's like, come on, Vanilla Ice, indulge your obsession. And this is like, this is like where Polnareff ultimately ends up, is like in the beginning, like, he is indulgent in his obsession. It is his sole motivation. He doesn't really, he likes the Crusaders, but he's not super invested in, like, their goal. And now he has learned to temper his obsession. He is, like, his drive is what makes him stronger as opposed to his weakness, like Vanilla Ice. And I just thought that was really fascinating. I think as well, it's sort of, there's a lot, you could draw a few similarities, but I think in particular something that stands out to me is sort of the design of Silver Chariot is like a knight, and Cream is like a demon sort of looking thing. It's got like horns and like, you know, sharp teeth and like a, you know, gaping mouth and stuff like that. Sort of
coming to slay the dragon.
Exactly. So he's like slaying the demons. Polnareff is like he's slaying like his personal demons, his demons involving obsession and like guilt and things like that. I just thought it was really fascinating. It's something that I didn't pick up the first time I watched these episodes.
Freaking Dio be looking for people to hire, right? Vanilla Ice comes up with his resume. I have a very powerful stand. I'm also a bottom. Dio's like, hired.
Actually, I kind of want to talk about that for a little bit. All of Dio's minions have a heart motif to them. Vanilla Ice has it. Darby has it.
Undertale? Like, what's...
Yeah, what do you think the deal with the heart motif is?
See, here's the thing. This is why it's... I thought about this for a bit, and I tried to figure it out. But honestly, because, like, the symbol of the heart is such an overused and oversaturated thing, it's pretty much impossible based on based on the context of Stardust Crusaders and the context that the symbol is normally used in, and like the many uses for it, and the fact that it's everywhere, it's sort of like it's almost impossible to pin it down. It's more, I feel it's more just it's definitely something that's only common in like the stand users that are very close to him, like the ones that reside in there with him.
Right.
And I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know. The heart motif actually like stays a little bit. It appears in part 4. It appears in part 5. Does it appear in part 6?
It does.
I forgot. Oh, yeah. It does. All right. But you know, it appears in different contexts each time. Like in part 4, it's like very prominent, and in part 5, it's most prominent on like the protagonists who are generally just and good and not Dio.
I think what the heart motif means with like Dio's minions in like part 3 is very different than what the heart means in parts 4, 5, and 6. I guess I can take
people that he has claimed as his bottoms.
No, honestly, I think, I mean, he said that jokingly, but like I kind of think that's what it is.
Oh, it probably is.
I mean,
we all know Dio has definitely had some fun.
No, but I mean, they talk about
Dio is not straight, Jesus. The way they talk about Dio, the way he's like the narrator speaks of him, and the way that like Avdol and Kakyoin have spoke about him, this man is horny. All right.
Well, I mean, they talk about him like there's this sort of like,
oh gosh, he's so hot.
There's a terrifying sensuality to him.
Terrifyingly sensual. I hate that combination of words so much. It's awful.
And I think that's sort of what the heart is like all these people, especially Vanilla Ice, are so obsessed and like so drawn to Dio that like it's like they love Dio like unconditionally. I mean, and I think, you know, once we get to part 6 and like we can sort of talk more about this concept of like godhood and things like that. I mean, it kind of is like they're zealots. And
Poochie, hi, how you doing?
Yeah, exactly. There is an unconditional love for Dio, and especially you know, and we haven't seen him technically yet, but like Dio also in the final battle has a heart motif to his design. Yeah. He has a belt buckle. He has a headband.
He got him on his knees for some reason.
The world is kind of, you know, its headpiece kind of has like a heart thing going on.
Well, I think it has like hearts in similar places. It might also have like hearts on its knees and like, has a belt buckle type thing.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, that is.
So there's like a reverence, you know, and it honestly it kind of is terrifying. Like the fact that like
that they simp so hard for someone so awful.
That Dio is like so supernaturally charismatic that Vanilla Ice is willing to decapitate himself for him. It's kind of freaky. Yeah, so...
Thomas, you know what I'm about to bring up if you have nothing left to say about this?
I have nothing left on the hearts.
You know what?
Yeah.
Guess what I'm about to bring up. Please guess. I want you to guess.
Okay, alright.
It's something I bring up. I've brought up several times and probably shouldn't be bringing up several times.
I'm guessing it's something about horniness.
No, it's about Ayn Rand, but same difference. So basically, y'all know I had to fight Ayn Rand over the summer, and she has this whole. This is more of a joking thing than a serious thing, but it's like semi-serious. We all, everyone has such great unconditional love for Dio. My queen, she's not my queen.
My old foe.
My sarcastic queen, my old enemy, does not believe that unconditional love exists. And I had to write an entire paper about that, and let's just say she's about half right. It would take me another 2 hours to explain why, but she is half right. The other half is she misunderstood what that actually means, because she's dumb sometimes.
So how do you think that applies to this?
Trying to think of that right now.
Well, you said that unconditional love doesn't exist.
It does and doesn't.
All right.
Honestly, I don't even know how it applies anymore. It's just because she...
I just wanted to complain about Ayn Rand.
See, I have to do that every once in a while. So basically, she just misunderstands what people say when they refer to it.
Yeah.
But in this case, basically, a part of the point of my essay is that when people say... Actually, no, this can apply. When people say unconditional love, right? They usually mean that there's actually a condition to it. It's just that the conditions are so obvious that they don't really consider them. They mean conditions that are not trivial.
Mm-hmm.
For example, they consider a part of love to be respect and whatnot, as in that is one of the only conditions you need besides a few other things, like the very baseline conditions. They just consider every other condition, like ability, whatever, literally everything else that is trivial to be completely unnecessary in love, and they consider it sometimes problematic. However, Ayn Rand just completely misunderstands that and says that people actually mean it like there is no conditions, as in there's no respect either. And this is true. These kinds of relationships are bad, as she points out with one very abusive relationship in a book that she writes, but she's also very problematic. She doesn't know. That was the only correct thing she ever said about relationships before, I'll tell you that. I'm not going to go off about the Fountainhead, but Jesus Christ. Anyways, Dio's simps, Dio's fan club are that sort of unconditional love that does not have respect, so basically truly unconditional love, which is bad.
Yeah.
Because there is no respect.
So...
They have respect for Dio, but it doesn't... See, it's debatable whether Dio has respect for them. That's the interesting part. Does he? I don't know. Let's discuss that, perhaps.
It seems very individual, and I guess I'm going to try and summarize that for my own sake, because that was a lot of information.
It was a lot.
So, sort of what... Like, if we were to look at this sort of... through a Randian lens, we would...
Ew, gross.
We would maybe say that... this is unconditional love from the Dio fan club, we'll call it. Every character,
the simps
with the hearts, which is Vanilla Ice,
both
Darby's, Billie Jean, who gets killed immediately, and
that other guy,
Nukesaku.
Yeah, that guy.
So yeah, I mean, I think that would be a correct reading, or at least a reading I could understand, because, Dio in part 1 especially talks about, he talks about himself as, a superior being, I think there's even a line in part 1 where, Jonathan is like, how could you kill all these innocent people? And he's like, do you hesitate when you, step on an ant or something like that? And especially now that Dio has a stand, I mean, he is even more above their level. So I think it kind of, it exists in that aspect. It is this sort of toxic, unconditional love. Yeah, that's interesting to think about.
Not to mention the one of the very few things I agree with Ayn Rand about. Where was I going with that? God damn it, I forgot.
Is that I don't agree with anything Ayn Rand has to say.
Oh, basically that. Well, one of the things she mentions is that a healthy relationship, this is true, by the way. This is an alarming moment. She's right. Sometimes she was right about this, where a relationship, a positive and good relationship can only exist when both sides are equal to each other. This is also something that I've been reading Berserk, and I've just realized about 2 seconds ago that Griffith has a very similar idea, because I just read a chapter where he goes off about nobody, it's like the most interesting chapter that I've read so far. My man goes off and says that the only people he'll ever consider his friends are those who are completely equal to him.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say that D-Hope definitely does not see his simps as completely equal to them. He's just using them in a very similar way that Griffith used the entire band of the Hawk. He never considered them really as friends because they served him, because they were not equal to him, because they, simped for him, if you will.
Right.
And then proceeded to sacrifice them all because he never considered them as friends, because they were there to serve him. And even they admitted that.
I mean, I'm just thinking about all this stuff, like, in relation to, like, the Whole Horse Boingo episode, where, Dio, like, even though, like, Whole Horse is kind of dangerous, I mean, he has a gun, which, dangerous weapon.
He has a gun.
Dio seems to regard Whole Horse as, like, like, he finds him amusing, even though...
Whole Horse is amusing, goddamn.
Well, specifically the fact that, like, Whole Horse is trying to kill him, and, like, Dio still finds him, like, he has this, like, amusing fascination with him. It's like watching, like, for Dio, it's like watching, like, a small child, like, try and do something an adult would normally do. And I think, I mean, that it certainly is this, like, power dynamic of, like, Dio, like, whatever he might say, like, is sort of almost, like, placating his servants, and especially when we think about, what our next discussion is going to be, where Dio just loses his fucking mind. It's like...
Very fun.
Like... This is all just a facade, really. This sort of, godly, I mean, not his superiority complex, but the way in which he is superior, or the way in which, like, he portrays himself as superior to his underlings. It's all just kind of fake, and it's all just kind of a facade. And then once, the final battle happens, we see, like, part 1 Dio come through, and, like, that's who he really is. It's interesting.
Can never escape your destiny. You will forever be a goblin.
Well, speaking of goblins...
Perhaps the king of them.
Dance,
magic, dance,
Jareth.
baby.
I was just going to say Jareth. We're not at part 4 yet, Emily.
I would agree. I would actually say that I feel like part 1 Dio might actually... all I'm going to say is that JoJo Part 1 came out in, like, the same year that the movie Labyrinth came out in. I'm just going to point that out.
Make your own conclusions.
Make your own conclusions about that. We all know that Araki simps for Bowie. And so do I. We all do. If you don't simp for Bowie, who are you?
Emily will hunt you down.
Speaking of Dio, I wrote down a lovely quote, something that he said in these episodes that I still haven't entirely picked apart yet, but I wonder if Tom of Ass over here has done so. Running away from me is running away from life itself. Dio, whatever the fucking year it is.
1980 something.
89, I think.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. It's weird because, I mean, we sort of associate Dio in these parts with, like, he's like death. Like, he'll just straight, like, kill a fool immediately.
Killed the fool.
Yeah. Oh, man. Ugh, too soon. Even though it came out, like, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. But anyway, yeah, I think... again, this is sort of, like, the godlikeness and, like, superiority. It's like, you know, like, you can't run away from a god. Like, there's, like, an omnipotence to that. And, like, you know, at the same time, like, you can't really run away from life. It's interesting.
It's interesting that he considers himself life and not death.
Yeah.
Because you can run away from life. It's called
suicide.
Yeah, it's called suicide.
That actually reminds me of we're bringing up a lot of like side stuff, but
side stuff is good.
Tom King's miniseries, Mr. Miracle, which, I mean, I don't want to get like so deep into DC lore, but essentially the premise is that Mr. Miracle, who his moniker in the DC universe is that, or his tagline rather, is that he's the world's greatest escape artist. It essentially is it opens with him attempting suicide, and so there's sort of a question throughout this whole miniseries of like, can Mr. Miracle like escape life? Why would a person try and escape life, whether it be through suicide or other means? And so I think it's really fascinating. And what ultimately, without giving away too much, what Mr. Miracle says, Mr. Miracle, the miniseries says, is that you should go and like do whatever makes you happy. Like, if if you just want to like leave and like, escape your life in sort of a symbolic sense, like change your name or whatever, like stuff like that, you should do that. Like, it is a valid choice. And I think it's kind of interesting to think about in the case of JoJo, where we think about fate in JoJo as like, is like this immovable thing, and this kind of, fate, and like we think about fate as fate. That was a really smart thing to say. We think about fate as like inescapable.
Looks like I stole the brain cell this episode.
We think about fate as inescapable, and Dio comparing himself to life, like life is fate, like essentially, like, you can't escape that. And the fact that we have the main characters, the Joestars, they're sort of trying to defy this fate, this, what Dio views as fate. But I mean, maybe he has like an incorrect view of the situation. Like, he thinks that he is fate, like he is inevitable. I mean, his powers are, just as a vampire would make him dangerous, but the fact that he also has a stand is, just pushes him over the edge. And I think it's kind of a running theme, like, with all the JoJo villains, is, like, this misinterpretation of the villains of fate and, like, what is supposed to happen. So I think that's kind of, like, what is being played with that line a little bit. That was a long rant for one line.
I mean, it's a line, I'll tell you that. All right, we just went on a how many minute long rant about Dio. That was not something I certainly planned for. Shall we move on from the sugar daddy TM?
Sure. Let's talk about the sandy daddy. Iggy.
No. The Sandy Daddy is Sandman in Part 7.
Fair enough.
Iggy is a dog.
Yeah, so the one thing I wanted to talk about with Iggy is they mentioned this concept of the proud soul. So, like, Vanilla Ice is kicking the shit out of Iggy, and he's
Poor
like...
baby.
An animal could not possess a proud soul. Like, they just do not have the capacity for it. And then, when Iggy saves Polnareff, the narrator jumps in and says that Iggy does have a proud soul because stands are a manifestation of one's, emotions and their being, essentially. The fool, like, just acted on its own to save Polnareff. It wasn't, like, a conscious decision by Iggy, and, like, that proves that Iggy has a proud soul, as the as the show puts it. So what do you think is going on there, Emily?
I think you just summed it up, though. I just think that Vanilla Ice is a dog kicker and should be put down and was put down. I'm happy about that. Oh my god, everybody, I don't mean to sound like Joe Exotic. Them animal rights people. Them animal rights people, really, they probably don't like him. Because he kicks dogs and doesn't think that animals have feelings.
But, like, what
Even
about...
cats have feelings.
But it's... I guess, like, what I'm trying to get at is, like, what is the proud soul? Like, you know, I mean...
Okay, I can define that then. I got you.
It's clearly, like, this is, like, whatever is happening in this scene where the fool saves Polnareff is, like, beyond any sort of, like, you know, conscious emotional decision. It's just, like, instinct takes over, and, like, that's what Iggy does. So, like, what is the proud soul?
See, I wouldn't even, based on everything else except for that, I wouldn't say it really has much to do with instinct, because Araki just likes to talk about instinct for some reason. But I would say that it's just sort of like a sense of self, and that's the way that you sort of acquire a stand. You know, every creature that has a stand in this universe has a sense of self and a sense of, well, I guess instinct is a part of it. I feel the reason that stands manifest is because of self-defense. It's the need to protect your body from being dead. So you can't. I guess it sort of has something to do with instinct. It's sort of like a combination of having a sense of self and instinct, perhaps. I'm just spitballing here. I'm trying. Hold on. There's something there that I'm getting in my brain. I just need to word it properly.
I mean, maybe I can talk about it for a little bit. I mean, I think you sort of nailed it with the sense of self. And it's interesting because, you know, there's not an overwhelming amount of, like, animal stand users in JoJo. We got rats, we got birds, we got dog.
And a cat.
And a cat, yeah. So it's interesting, and then, like, of all of those, like, Iggy is the one with, like, the most personality. Like, what, like, you know, and what's interesting is, like, especially, like, as time goes on, like, stands become, like, you know, it's questionably canon, but, like, a Gucci bag has a stand. Like,
we're not going to talk about that.
Lots of things in the JoJo universe have stands, but I think the difference is sort of what I think is the proud soul is, like, the ability to, like, sacrifice, like, one's self for, like, others. I mean, I don't like that this show calls it a proud soul. I mean, I feel like that kind of confuses things a bit. But, you know, we talked a lot about in the Pet Shop episodes about how Iggy is sort of like, he learns self-sacrifice. And this is, like, the ultimate expression of it is, and, like, especially because, like, the Fool is, like, the manifestation of Iggy's is the manifestation of Iggy's soul, like, who he is as a person. The fact that, like, it just acts on its own to save Polnareff is, like, again, like, how we sort of said, like, this is where the character arcs wrap up. This is where Iggy's character arc wraps up, is he has lost his selfishness, and he has made the ultimate sacrifice for another person.
I'm going to half agree with you right there. Only because, yes, that was Iggy's character development indeed. But also, stands entirely manifest because of self-defense, and generally the concept of pride isn't generally used in context with saving people. It usually has to, like, I'm just gonna go back to the whole concept of the self again.
I just want to say real quick. I mean, I don't think stands only manifest in self-defense. Like, I mean, Part 4, that's not where Josuke gets a crazy diamond.
Yes, we know that.
There's a lot of examples of characters
I forgot what I was
not developing their stands through self-defense.
Oh yeah, but mostly because they call it a proud soul, and I really don't think either that there might be a mistake on Araki's part, where that general pride really doesn't often have something to do with self-sacrifice. I feel like it's more just that I think it's just the fact that he developed in general, possibly. Just that he became something stronger and greater than what he once was, and that he found something to believe in, necessarily. That's what gave him a proud soul. It's not that he sacrificed himself, I would say. It's just that he had such strong conviction and determination to protect this one thing. That's what I'm getting at here.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense. I think that's good.
So if it's a proud soul to protect only yourself, that would be one. But if it's just to protect your best buddy over here, that's still something he believes in. He finally found his home that he always wanted to find.
Like, the fact that, like, Iggy has, like, found a family, sort of, is what enriches his soul. It's, like, that's what gives him, like, a proud soul, is that, like, you know, he's found people, and, like, when you find people and, like, you connect with them, it enriches yourself. And, like, that's what the proud soul is. All right, I like that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Bouncing off each other like fucking cars.
Mm-hmm. Like cars in a ravine.
I will never get over that scene. I'm just going to point that out right there. Every time I think of it, I smile.
It brings me such joy.
It does. It's so funny. It's
All right.
Out of nowhere.
Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
Let's consult the notes. Hold on. I need to add in some good old fillers by just yelling into the void, so it's not like completely silent. Let's talk about Holly.
Okay.
For a little bit. Just one thing,
yeah,
really.
God, there's so much that happens in these episodes. I sort of forgot about that plot line.
So Holly, right? This whole scene is not actually as important as I thought it would, because it's like, oh, you just have to believe in them, blah blah blah, and which is fine. But like, remember the big Lisa disappointment?
Yeah.
Time for the big Holly disappointment. Although there already has been a big Holly disappointment, but the big Holly disappointment just got even worse. The way that they draw Holly and animate her in one of these things, it's just pure BDSM.
Yeah, it's pretty off-putting.
It's like, this is someone's mom.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I
this
sort of get it.
Nothing to do with anything.
Like,
though.
they're trying to portray a sense of vulnerability, but like we know the situation Holly is in. Like, she's gonna die real soon.
Lying on her sick bed.
Yeah.
Trying to breathe. I feel like that's all we need when it comes to showing vulnerability.
It's pretty
she
gratuitous.
Can't move.
Yeah. I mean, we can we'll probably save this for when we start part 4 in 2 weeks, but there's a line in here where Susie Q says something to the effect of, like, you know, Joseph Joestar has never betrayed my expectations. Come back in 2 weeks.
See,
but,
she didn't know. When she found out, she probably royally beat his ass.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to lean too hard into this, because we will certainly be talking about Joseph again once we get to part 4. But I mean, I think sort of what is being said there is, like, you know, it's like Susie knows that, like, Joseph is, like, a shitlord, you know? I mean, like, all the stuff that we talked about in part 2, where he's just, like, a goofy asshole, like, you know, like, messes with people's heads constantly just because, like, it's fun for him. But, like, at the end of the day, like, all of that trickery and all of that stuff, like Susie always has the expectation that, like, Joseph is going to do the right thing in the end. And, like, I mean, even with the shenanigans that happen in part 4, I think Joseph, like, ultimately is, like, he's still a good person. He's still, like, an ally of justice or what have you. And, like, he makes the right decisions in the end.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
He is a lord of shit. That is simply how he functions.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny little scene that they just kind of throw in there. It's also where, like, most of the silly stuff is in these episodes, relatedly.
Ooh, shall we? Shall we? Shall we? Shall we?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any other serious stuff to talk about.
Yes. Oh my god. That one's
the
so
amazing
good.
Darby English continues.
See, we didn't even bother talking about the end of those episodes because there's nothing to say.
Yeah,
It's one funny thing, and also, rest in peace, my boy Billie Jean. Rip, my dude.
Billie Jean. Yeah. I like how he just, like, gets taken down immediately. It's pretty
great.
funny. The whole Nukesaku bit is pretty humorous as well. Just because I kind of like the idea that, like, you know, Dio has, like, this elite squad of, you know, servants, and, like, one of them gets taken down because Jotaro puts his hat on a TV. One of them gets taken down immediately, like, without even getting a chance to attack. And Nukesaku is just incompetent. Like, yeah.
The best part is that, like, you'd like, oh, they figured out that he was one of the bad guys, TM, because, like, his hands were backwards, but at the same time, that person could have easily just been some, like, in their heads, could have easily been some random woman with weird hands.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time.
It wouldn't be the first time. Like, it could have literally been, like, they barely had any proof for the fact that he was a bad dude, which he was, but at the same time, that's all there was. That doesn't, just because she had weird hands doesn't mean that she was, you know.
I mean, the Joestars and Kakyoin forgot to drink their Respect Women juice.
Oh, yes.
But fortunately, it was the one time where Respect Women juice would have led to their downfall.
Yeah. One more thing that's semi-serious, semi-funny. That lovely quote from Polnareff, Iggy, watch my back and I'll watch yours, big character development and whatnot, but also it just reminded me of that meme where it's like, Dad, we're not getting a dog. We get a dog, Dad and the dog. And then they become best friends.
It's the scene with Iggy and Polnareff.
Yes, that.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I'm trying to remember all the stuff with Susie Q before they have the big conversation about, like, Holly. I think is pretty funny and random. She's like,
"Let me take a picture of this shit that someone."
Yeah. Let me take
a shit on the
Let
sidewalk.
me take a picture of this, like, homeless man who is just living outside this ramen restaurant. Yeah. Like, also she buys a turtle at some point, and
a friend.
And there's just a guy holding a turtle.
It's great.
And it's foreshadowing for part 5.
Gross.
Yeah.
I do have another silly thing.
Yeah, go for it.
One thing that I feel like nobody talks about, but I thought it was funny. Just very minor, very silly thing. When the whole mansion rumbles as Vanilla Ice is having a great time trying to murder Polnareff, and it just cuts to Dio reading a book, and he just is completely unfazed by it. The whole place shakes, and he's just vibing.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. We're gonna get to Dio's silly stuff next time.
My God,
because
Dio,
oh my God,
bastard.
But yeah, that's pretty funny.
My man's on crack.
I'm trying to think of what else.
Dio just be like, yes, I am sexy and charismatic, and then in the finale, he's like, I just did so much crack. Oh my God.
That really is a good way of putting it. I never thought about that before. That's good. Yeah.
Actually, he probably did bath salts.
Yeah.
My man's scratching at his head.
He's smoking paint. He's, like, sniffing paint thinner. Like,
I feel like he did at least 3 substances.
I mean, why do you think his, like, why do you think his lips are green? It's the paint thinner. Perhaps
this is why Giorno has such a big grudge against freaking drugs, because he was a crack baby.
That's a crack baby, fool. Do yourselves a favor and look up Mr. T and the T-Force. That comic is insane. But yeah. I can't think of any other silly stuff.
Baby Giorno.
These were kind of serious episodes.
Yeah, I'm done.
Anything? All right, cool. All right,
Bye,
so
Vsauce. Michael is leaving.
and
I found my fingers.
if you want to see all the silly, semi-serious stuff that I post about and talk about online, you can follow me on Twitter at Thomas M. Brickman. I also do another podcast with my buddy Kevin, where we talk about video game news and also review video games at the same time. You can tune into that by going to the website wecb.fm and just clicking on the live stream. That's right there on the front page from 5 to 6 on Fridays. We also have an archive channel on YouTube, which you can find. It's just post-game content. And updates and stuff regarding that show can be found at PostGameCon. That's at PostGameCon. And Emily, where can people find you on the internet?
Have you ever heard of this place called Twitter?
I haven't, no.
Okay, well, it's there.
Even though I just plugged my Twitter.
It's there at Emily Winkles. That's a V, not a B, because UPS.
Screw
oh my God,
you,
wait,
United.
I forgot to talk about my Vanilla Ice story.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
Maybe another time. I will open up the next episode with the Vanilla Ice story.
Sounds good. All right, and with all that said, we'll see you guys. Oh wait, I forgot this show's social media. I have so much social media to plug between two shows. All right, you can find news and funny memes and like Emily live commentating whatever part she's reading.
Oh my God, it's great. Trust me.
By following at iwanttofightar1 on Twitter and iwanttofightaraki on Instagram. And with all that said, we'll see you guys next time for the finale of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stardust Crusaders with episodes 45, 46, 47, and 48. And with all that said, we'll see you guys next time.